Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today I have a Hollywood weather report for you. And that's that Channing Tatum is in the middle of a perfect storm. He's coming off of the hugely successful 22 Jump Street. He just had The Book of Life hit theaters where he moved into animation for the first time, and it's been a very solid performer for which he did a lot of press, so he was a good team player there. He just had it announced that they're getting a Gambit solo movie for him over at Fox, which he'll co-produce. Foxcatcher is coming up, and he's getting a ton of press as Sony Pictures Classics pushes to get him an Oscar nomination for the role. And then, of course, he's also shooting Magic Mike XXL, which he's been talking about a lot in all that press for Foxcatcher. And all of those elements have come together in this perfect storm I'm describing to have lightning strike. And that's that Quentin Tarantino is in negotiations with Channing Tatum to play a major role in his upcoming film, The Hateful Eight. I mean, talk about a fantastic opportunity for Channing Tatum. That's going to take his career in yet another interesting and possibly very successful direction. And as all this coverage exists with Foxcatcher, we're starting to get a good picture of what Channing Tatum is like behind the scenes. And I think it's all very interesting. But first, let's talk about this Hateful Eight situation. So the film is largely cast, and right now, and I think this is if you want to read between the lines of this announcement, here's what you'll find. The Hateful Eight, Tarantino and Harvey Weinstein are trying to sell the distribution rights to it across the globe, but so far nobody's buying it. And I think that's because the cast, while I think would get Tarantino fans excited, wouldn't get a distribution studio excited. I mean, think about it. Who's the draw here besides Quentin Tarantino? You've got Jennifer Jason Leigh, Kurt Russell, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, Bruce Dern, Walton Goggins, who I love from Justified, but he doesn't have a huge fan base, obviously, beyond Justified fans. And then also, of course, Samuel L. Jackson. Christoph Waltz isn't joining again, so you don't have that kind of a reunion to promote. And then also, I think Django Unchained really obviously benefited from Leonardo DiCaprio and Jamie Foxx. And then Inglourious Basterds had Brad Pitt. So who's the star here? Who's going to drive ticket sales? And I think that Tarantino and Weinstein are beginning to realize this, and they said, well, you know who everybody's talking about right now, but who has now some credibility thanks to this Foxcatcher awards run that Sony Pictures Classics is pushing. And by the way, as you might recall from my Foxcatcher review, I said that that move to get Channing Tatum an Oscar nod is legitimate. I think he actually has a genuine chance. So they're like, hey, let's go with him. And that is, I think, great for The Hateful Eight, and it's great for Channing Tatum. And what is it about Channing Tatum, do you guys think? Because when I talked about the Gambit movie, a lot of you said, I'm sorry, I just don't like Channing Tatum. I have so little respect for him. But there must be something about this guy that both Tarantino and Steven Soderbergh would want to work with him. I mean, those guys are very highly artistically minded directors. But, and here's the but, they're also very good in terms of mainstream qualities to their films. They don't always do it, but they know what it takes to sell tickets themselves. And I think that that's why they wanted to work with Channing Tatum in the past. And Channing Tatum, to his credit, wants to evolve as an actor in terms of not only his craft, but also his image. So that's why he's wanted to work with them. I mean, he could have gotten anyone to direct Magic Mike, which he also produced, but he wanted Steven Soderbergh. And Steven Soderbergh had such a good experience that, Channing Tatum was also in that, I forget the name of the movie. It was the one, the fighting movie that he had with the female wrestler, Gina Carano. He was in that. Channing Tatum had a small role. And Steven Soderbergh has returned to be the DP on Magic Mike XXL. So there's a strong relationship there that's been maintained. It wasn't even a one-off. And maybe Channing Tatum can work his magic with Tarantino and become part of Tarantino's stable of actors. I mean, that's all very exciting. And I think what I think is impressive about Channing Tatum, and I think that I first saw it when I did the press conference for The Book of Life. I'll put a link at the end of this video so you can go watch it yourself. But he's really savvy on the business end of movie making. And in this big Hollywood Reporter spread they have just put up with him for Foxcatcher, I'll put a link to that in the video description. It's a very good article. But Amy Pascal, the head of Sony, said, you know what, Channing Tatum is a great businessman. And that is such a compliment. And she didn't have to say that because that wouldn't help. It's not going to help him get an Oscar. She could have just focused on what a great artist he is. Now he's pushing his boundaries. But no, she said he's a great businessman. And I picked up on that too when I got to see him speak openly at this press conference. And so that just shows you, that's another thing. Some people have been saying, why are you talking so much business when you review Interstellar? And I think it's because the business stuff isn't looking so good for Christopher Nolan, maybe perhaps to some degree right now. But the business is important because it has such a huge effect on what you see on screen. And look at Channing Tatum. He is a successful actor, and he is doing so much with his career and actually becoming one of the biggest names in Hollywood because he can orchestrate that himself. Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, also very good businessmen who orchestrate their own careers at this point. It's very exciting. And the other thing they revealed in this article, though, is that Channing Tatum is currently up to $10 million a picture. So it's not only getting him better opportunities on screen, but it's getting him bigger checks. So I'm curious, what do you think of Channing Tatum being in a Quentin Tarantino movie? And what do you think of him being known around town as a good businessman? Do you also agree that that's important? Does it change how you feel about understanding the business side of Hollywood at all? Or do you still feel that's a misdirect and everybody should be focusing more on the art and I guess leave the business to the studios and the producers? Although they're the ones who have to say yes to you, so whenever you negotiate with someone, you should understand where they're coming from, right? But anyway, that's the first story of the day, and it, again, is just a great time to be Channing Tatum. All right, so the second story of the day actually is about China. This is a great story. I love it so much. We're talking a lot about China. I just put up Movie Math last night, and China is contributing so much money to the big Hollywood movies. They made Guardians of the Galaxy the second biggest movie of the year with $100 million, which they just added, and they are adding a lot of money to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They added a lot of money to Frozen, but one movie they added a ton of money to was obviously Transformers 4, and that's why that's the biggest movie of the year still to date, with over $1 billion. It wouldn't have got into the $1 billion range without China, which contributed something to around, I think $200 million off the top of my head to Transformers 4's bottom line. And so obviously a lot of other studios want to get their pictures into China, to shoot there, to have them basically be co-productions like they did with Transformers 4 so that they can appeal to the Chinese movie-going audience and get them to go and see the movie. Because just because a movie opens in China doesn't mean everyone's going to go. I mean, look, Guardians of the Galaxy has done very well with $100 million, but it's nowhere near what Transformers 4 was able to do because it incorporated those Chinese elements into the film. It had that one supporting cast member who was Stanley Tucci's assistant, or, I think actually she managed his Hong Kong division, but he treated her like an assistant. And then also, of course, they had a number of scenes take place in Hong Kong. And as I've said before, also with Black Hat coming down the line, from Michael Mann and Chris Hemsworth, we're getting very familiar with the way Hong Kong looks, right? We can start to spot it in movies. But anyway, so more movies are applying to China for rights to film there. And so they said they've had 80 applications so far this year, and they're approving most of them. But this is where it gets interesting. Here's the criteria for what you need in your movie to get approved to shoot in China, all right? You have to have cultural elements from both countries represented in the film. So you can have a lot, let's say, obviously Hollywood film. You can have certain things of American culture, but you must represent Chinese culture in the film in some way. They've also changed it to you must have one lead actor be from the Chinese film industry, a Chinese personality. I'm sure it doesn't necessarily have to be a Chinese movie star, but you have to have a lead, not an Asian actor from Hollywood, but an actor from China. And I think that's a great new rule. I think it's really important to bulk up these roles. As you might recall, that was one of my problems with Godzilla. That was, of course, supposed to have a hook to Japan. And, Ken Watanabe was in the film, but he didn't really have a really big part. Nobody really had a big part, though, to be fair. But I think that it would be better to have, I guess that would qualify, though. But I think it's important, not just to film in China, but to incorporate China into the actual movie. Apparently, so does China. So you have to have one lead actor, and then they say the director and the crew can be from Hollywood. That's fine. They're not going to have any requirements there. But what's on screen must be have a duality to it and represent China respectfully. And also, of course, you can't talk any Chinese politics. You can't come out and say, by the way, we're here on Chinese soil where it's a horrible, oppressive place. You can't do that. So I think that's very interesting, and there's so much money here. You're going to see a number of Hollywood pictures playing ball by these rules, which is going to be a great opportunity. And I hope they don't just take this one Chinese actor, like they don't do the bare minimum to qualify. It would be great if they were to make some more diverse films. And, there's a lot of Asian talent doing really well behind the camera in Hollywood too. So that's a demographic or ethnicity, I guess you could say, which is, really making leaps and bounds in Hollywood. Women are still the furthest behind. Oh, it's so frustrating. Okay, let's move on. Now, I'll be reviewing later today the Into the Woods trailer, the latest one they just dropped with some singing. But let's look at these motion posters. They don't move here. If you want to go, you can look them up online to see the motion. But I will tell you, the motion is so small and so nothing that I really wouldn't call them motion posters. So this is pretty much what they look like. I mean, occasionally some of the branches move like the tiniest bit in the back. They don't even do anything like Harry Potter-ish. So let's look at these posters. I think that the ad campaign for Into the Woods has been very interesting, and I'm curious to see how it's going to pay off. I would think that for something like this, you would need an ad blitz. They're starting to ramp up to a blitz, but I think the blitz should have started maybe like in September. But we'll see. So the first poster, of course, is for Johnny Depp, who I don't know why he's hiding his face here, because in the new trailer, you fully see his face. So there's no reason to continue to maintain the mystery. You can also fully see his face on the cover of that Entertainment Weekly magazine that we looked at just a few weeks ago. But here he is once again, but you can see his hands a little bit better here, and it almost looks like gloves there. I don't know. We'll discuss it in the new trailer, but there's this weird vibe that's been created between him and Red Riding Hood, because she's too young to be like a romantic interest, I guess, or like a sexual interest. So you're like, well, what's the relationship now between the wolf and Red Riding Hood? Because that's kind of what it's always been a metaphor for, right? But anyway, so I think that I put this first. I only picked the ones that I thought were the best. I think these aren't the most amazing posters. I like the font that they write the character with on the top, but I feel like there could be more. Like the second one. This is by far and away the best poster for the movie. It looks amazing. I like Little Red, the way it's written there. And just the composition here is really impressive. I feel like I'm a judge on one of those reality shows, like America's Next Top Model or something, where I'm like, that's kind of what this feels like, actually. Like, these people all competed in America's Next Top Model in this photo shoot, this fairy tale photo shoot, and here I am, I'm Tyra, critiquing where they did it. I'll be the guest judge, actually. Nobody can be Tyra but Tyra. And we're talking about how good a job they did. And I think by far and away, Lila Crawford wins. She does a great job here using the red in the boot and her Red Riding Hood, obviously. She looks really cool. I love the way she looks like she's like, what is she looking at? I want to know what's going on. The lighting, the way it hits her from down below, it creates such depth and interest and excitement and the feeling of movement. This really does feel like an America's Next Top Model critique, at least to me. If you've never watched the show, it was pretty good for a while. But anyway, I think it looks really, really good. I'm really impressed with it. And this is by far and away the best poster for the film. I hope that these are the qualities that they highlight and play up in the movie. But I just love it. Also, by the way, I have to say, it reminds me of like an old Nancy Drew cover. I love those old-time illustrations that used to be on the front of Nancy Drew novels or Hardy Boy novels, and this is totally what this reminds me of. I wish somebody would make a detective movie like that. They've always been talking about making the Hardy Men with Ben Stiller and Tom Cruise. I don't know if this point that's ever going to happen, but I would hope it would have visuals like this. All right, I picked this next one because I think this is the worst poster. Of course, nobody knows who Mackenzie Mozzie is unless you've watched the BTT Disney behind-the-scenes look at the cast. Then you would know who she is. But the general public doesn't now. So unless this is a really cool poster, there's really no point for it unless I guess the point that everybody gets a poster. But she's Rapunzel. And why is Rapunzel lying down? If this was Sleeping Beauty, I'd be like, okay. But here I'm like, this makes no sense. It's just distracting. It's like the complete opposite of motion. She's literally lying dead-ish on the ground. Her eyes are open, kind of, I guess. But when you're dead, your eyes could be open. So I just think this is by far and away the worst poster, and I don't know what they were going for with that. And then the last one I really liked the Cinderella one. And I pulled it because, it's not particularly amazing in the composition, but I think Anna Kendrick looks really great here. She not only looks very pretty, but she looks really likable, and she looks like a lot of fun and very interesting. And it's not just enough to be really pretty. I think a lot of actresses have a hard time understanding that. They're like, am I the sexiest one in the room? My work here is done. But they don't understand that when you're playing the sexy game, new is always sexiest. So whenever somebody new enters the room, if they're anywhere near as sexy as you, they're going to win because they're new. It's a really short-term game, the sexy game. But I think that Anna Kendrick is going the right direction. This is like the Julia Roberts way to go. Something that I think Charlize Theron's trying to finally do. I think she played the sexy game for a long time. Didn't work out so well for her. But now as she moves away from that, she becomes more popular. And I think this is the image you need to have to appeal to both men and women. And it's really important to appeal to as broad a demographic as possible. Actresses need to have female fans because, interestingly, when an actress has male fans, they talk about them a lot on the internet, but they rarely go and see their movies. I mean, look what's happened to Scarlett Johansson. As she's become more female-friendly as an actress, her career has blown up because she suddenly has all this support. And of course, Jennifer Lawrence has a ton of support from female fans. It's really key. And I'm glad that Anna Kendrick seems to be realizing that. And I think this could be a really big role for her. I'm very excited for her in it. And I think whoever made this poster for her, it's obviously been heavily photoshopped, did a really nice job and did her a lot of favors with the way it turned out. But also, to her credit, she knew how to pose in the photo. She knew how to play up her best features while still being likable and accessible, not threatening. So it's great. I absolutely love it, and I think that this could be a big movie for her. I'm very excited. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Let's move on to the viewer question. And this is something I've seen a couple of people ask me to talk about. So you might be wondering, why wasn't it one of the stories? But it's the viewer question. But I picked the actual question from Ruvain Turner Music. And Ruvain says, "Hi Grace, can you please share your thoughts on Idris Elba spoiling that he and Tom Hiddleston are in Avengers Age of Ultron and his unhappiness about having to still work for Marvel? Thanks, smiley face." Yes, I think that this is an interesting story because it hasn't gotten a ton of traction. I saw some coverage in New York Magazine where they got to talk to Joss Whedon at some women's event, and they were like, "Do you hate Idris Elba?" And he was like, "Well, I'm a little disappointed, etc., etc." And that's not really the farthest this has gone. And I think because it's probably not going to be a really big part in the movie, but maybe it is, because there's some theory that he loses Mjolnir. I think that's something that they could be very easily building up when they try to have other people lifted in the beginning. That seems like just an innocuous scene where they're establishing the Avengers, downtime, personality, and dynamic, but instead they could be setting up the fact that even Thor can't lift it. And we do see that shot in the trailer where he's in the water, sans shirt or maybe sans everything, screaming. He always does so badly in these Avengers movies. He was also in that Hulk prison, which they, drop towards the ground. So, but anyway, so we'll see. So maybe Thor will lose Mjolnir, just like he has in the comics recently. But wouldn't it be interesting that instead of having a female character pick it up, maybe Idris Elba would pick it up? That would be cool, right? Heimdall, it's your time to, I always loved what Spill.com said about Thor, the first Thor, and they pointed out that Idris Elba was basically Asgard's doorman. It didn't occur to me when I was watching it, and that's why it's so interesting to get different perspectives on movies, because as soon as they said it, Corey said it, I was like, that's 100% right. That's hilarious and so horrible. So I think that, Idris Elba, that's probably why he's not happy. And I guess he doesn't get Mjolnir. He wouldn't be saying he's so unhappy. But I don't think he's happy being, going back and forth between being the doorman for Asgard and like the wise older black man that, the white character bounces ideas off and gets advice from, which has also been always a Hollywood stereotype, unfortunately. So, yes, well, also he maybe shouldn't have signed the contract. I mean, this is something that, Jessica Chastain has been very gun-shy about signing with a comic book property because she knows, and she said, this is the character you're going to be for your entire career. You better make sure you choose the right one. But Idris Elba jumped a little too fast, and now he's stuck with not a great character. But I think, obviously, Tom Hiddleston, but you can see that he's somewhat important to Marvel, or they understand that he has a fan base, because they could have brought Sif in here. And I'm sure a number of Sif fans will be like, why didn't Sif show up? And maybe she does, and Idris Elba didn't bother to mention her, but probably not. So when they think of the 2 most important characters to bring over from the Thor universe, the Thor movies, it's Tom Hiddleston, obviously, duh, but also Idris Elba. So maybe in Thor Ragnarok, he'll get a bigger role at least there. But they're not telling Idris Elba this. They're not doing a lot of damage control to make sure he's happy as part of the group. But if I were Idris Elba, look what happened to Jeremy Renner when he complained. It doesn't do a lot of good, and if anything, it can backburner you. So I would just complain behind the scenes, or not even complain. I'd just be like, it'd be cool if you gave me more to do. Or I keep showing them all the tweets I was getting about people wanting me to do more stuff and try and get a role through a more positive, course of, action. So well, I think that, it's not great that he spoiled it, but I think these movies can't rely so heavily on surprises, casting surprises, and oh, look who's here in this movie. I think, the movie should be surprised. There should be surprises when the story unfolds. Like, for instance, in Interstellar, and this is a spoiler, if you haven't seen Interstellar and you don't know anything about it at all, and you've done a really good job hiding from it, get out now. Okay, you've been warned. All right, in Interstellar, I knew Matt Damon was in the movie, but I had no idea what his role would be, and I turned out to still be quite surprised. And so I think that's how surprises have to be done. I think casting surprises are just too hard to keep a secret, And so I don't think it's horrible that it's been mentioned that Idris Elba is a part of it. I just think the real shame is that he has nothing to do. Maybe Marvel will change that. We'll see. And Tom Hiddleston has maybe too much to do. Something for us to certainly discuss. All right, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for your question, Ruvain Turner Music. Thank you so much. Everybody, please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.